Standing here tonight, the Mokem Kodosh, Beis HaKnesses, Beis HaMedrash HaGodol, Netzach Yisrael, Yerushalayim HaKodesh, Beroshus, Moireinu Amor De'asre, Agoyin HaBerliker Shlite, and Bershus Ovi Moiri Shlite. It's a great honor to host tonight, on the night of the Shloshim of my aunt, my mother's sister, Esther Shoshano Bas Reuven Olera Sholom. Actually, today is the Shloshim from the day of the Ptira. Even though the Levaya was a couple days later, and the Ma'aseh Shloshim we do from the day of the Ptira, but Mamish Bashel, tonight is the Shloshim from the day of the Ptira. And it's a great honor to have with us tonight a very renowned Marbitz Torah, Merkadi Shem Shomayim Barabim, Rabbi Glatstein Shlita, from the Five Towns, New York, and coming here to Eretz Yisrael. He's here on a special mission to spread and bring the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu bigger and greater in the world. So having him here tonight with us is a very big honor, and here at the Mokem Kodesh Miyuchot, very special. That's a Migdal Oil for Talmidei Chachomim and Mevakshei Torah here in this Beis Medrash and Beis Knesses. It should be Le'ilui Nishmos HaTorah of Esther Shoshana Bas Reuven. Even though she didn't have a simple life, she never got married, and she had her whatever she had, but she always had positivity. Even with all the difficulties, despite all the difficulties she went through, she was always enthusiastic with tremendous positivity. And that's a very big thing that we need to learn. And we as Bnei Torah, we have the schus to be Yoshve Beis HaMedrash and being part with Kiem Chayenu V'Erech Omeinu V'Em Negehemu V'Loilo. What a schus. So Vadai, we need to be positive. Machshava Tova Metzalfa Lemaise. And Vadai, like the Nefesh HaChaim says, the biggest, even though Al Shoysh Dvorim Olam Oimed Al Torah Al Avodah Mius Chasodim, but there's one thing that you can't have 1 second in the Welt without Torah. And if there will be 1 second in the world without Torah, miyad yachzev ha'olam leTorah b'vorim. So as I said, it's a great honor to have tonight with us Rabbi Glatstein from New York, all the way here to Yerushalayim HaKodesh. But he spreads Torah all over the world. With Torah Anytime and so many others. Mamish Abotzas Torah She'ein Tayah Ve'en Shayeh. And tonight is also co-sponsored by Yiboneh. And Be'ezer Hashem, all this is Mamish, this is a Knesiyah Shel Hashem Shomayim. Mamish, Talmidei Chachomim here, I said, Beroshus Moireinu Amor De'asre. So let's please all together, Be'ezer Hashem V'siyata Dishmaya V'zoichet V'mekabel Divrei Torah, Divrei Elokim Chayim, Harav Shlite V'chom.
Thank you so much, Reb Shmuel Shlita, for the very warm and kind introduction. Reshus Tamar Da'asra Shlita. It's really a great honor and privilege to have the opportunity to share Divrei Torah in Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh. And I'm very humbled that the Herman Mishpacha, that Reb Shabtai and Rebbe Tzin Yehudit, who I have a very special kesher with, because some of the shiurim that I'm zoicha to give, I get a lot of feedback and a lot of questions and a lot of shaklavataria from the Herman Mishpacha. And even though I don't always have good terutzim, but I feel the bikush and I feel the yearning for the Dvar Hashem, to understand the Dvar Hashem deeper and more meaningfully from the whole mishpacha. And that kesher that was forged, it transcends the oceans, it transcends land, and it brought me all the way here to this Makom Kadosh. May the learning tonight be Iloi Nishmas, Esther Shoshana, Bas Ruvain, the sister and sister-in-law, Reb Shabtai, and Rebbe Tzin Yehudit, Began Eden, Tehei Menuchasa. She should have an aliyah in the Olam HaEmes and be a Melitza Yeshara for her whole family. Arbias Goyal Tzedek. And I thank Hagoin, Reb Shmuel, the Rosh Koilel of the Schattenstein Koilel, one of the pillars of Torah here in Yerushalayim and in Eretz Yisrael. And we wish him tremendous Siyata Deshmaya and Hatzlacha Lahagdol Torah Lahadira. Tonight's shiur is also being co-sponsored by my good friend Rabbi Aaron Posen of Yibana. And we wish Yibana tremendous Hatzlacha in being Marbitz Torah and being Magdol Torah Lahagdol Torah Lahadira. So what could be a happier occasion? To be in Eretz Yisrael. You know, Rameir Shapiro says that the greatest simcha and the only simcha is to be in Eretz Yisrael. Yehi ratzon milfanecha Hashem Elokeinu v'karei avoseinu she'ta'aleinu b'simcha li'artzeinu, because there's no other way. Simcha and Eretz Yisrael are synonymous. V'haya ki savayu el haaretz, ein v'haya ela lashon simcha. So really, truly, it's a great simcha to be here. The two greatest simcha, Pekudei Hashem Yesharim Mesamchei Lev, and the simcha of being in Eretz Yisrael. So tonight I want to speak about two lines of Gemara, Masechta Tainis on Daf Chavtes. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Breid Rav Shmuel Bar Shilas Mishmei Derav. Kishem shemishanichnas Av mima'atin b'simcha. Just like when the month of Av enters, we diminish joy. Kach mishanichnas Adar marbim b'simcha. So too, when the month of Adar comes in, we increase our joy. We're all familiar with that. We know nice nigunim for that. You don't have to sing it right now. After the shiur, you could share with me any nigunim you know. Mishanichnas Adar marbim b'simcha. But I want to share with you one simple ha'ara on this Gemara. And at first, when I had this kasha, I couldn't believe nobody asks it, and then I realized everybody asks it. The Gemara should just say as follows: Amar Rav Yehuda, Breid Rav Shmuel Bar Shilas, Mishmei Derav, Mishenichnas Adar Marbim B'Simcha. When the month of Adar comes in, we should increase joy. Be happy in Adar. Adar is a great time. It's a great month. Everyone's looking forward to cleaning for Pesach and other happiness that's ahead. Adar is a great time. Just say, Mishenichnas Adar Marbim B'Simcha. What does it got to do with Av? It has something to do with Av. Kishem, just like Mishenichnas Av Mematin B'Simcha. Just like when Av comes in, we diminish our joy, so too when Adar comes in, we increase it. What do you mean so too? What do you mean just like? It has nothing to do with Av. Let's say Av was a happy time. Then in Adar we shouldn't be happy? Let's say Av didn't exist. Then in Adar we shouldn't be happy? Let's say Adar, you're supposed to be no emotion at all, not happy and not sad. Then in Adar we shouldn't be happy? What does Av have to do with Adar? Just say Mishenichnas, the simcha of Adar is irrespective of our emotions in the month of Av. So first I saw that Rav Moshe Shapiro is very busy with this question. What's the kishem? Kishem, just like. And then I saw the Vilna Gaon in his commentary to Megillas Esther. He asked the kasha. And the Ksav Sofer asked the kasha. And the Masorei Keach, Rav Lezer of Amsterdam, asked the question. This is the big question. In America, we would call this the $1 million question. What's the kishem of the Gemara? Kishem shemishenichnas av mematin besimcha kach mishenichnas adar marbin besimcha. With your permission, I would like to share with you this evening 3 approaches to this question. 3 amazing approaches. Each approach in and of itself will open up new vistas of understanding of the meaning of Chodesh Adar and the Yom Tov of Purim. Haba aleinu l'taiva. There's a halacha in Shulchan Aruch. There's actually an entire siman in Shulchan Aruch, siman Tav Kov Samach and Orach Chaim, that one always has to remember Churban Beis HaMikdash. Not only that, one has to make a zecher to the Beis HaMikdash. Lasois zecher l'chorban. So we know if you build a new home and you're building it from scratch, right opposite your doorway you have to have an amma by amma that is unplastered as zecher l'chorban. Many people do that, and even if you don't build it from scratch, if you repaint it, then also it's better to have an area, an amma by amma, that is unpainted. But there are many other remembrances we're supposed to make for the Churban, and they're basically not really observed. Here's an example. The Shulchan Aruch says, if you have a big Suda, you should leave over one place unset, Zecher l'Churban. Who does that? I don't think anybody does that. The Bir Halacha wonders, why doesn't anybody do that anymore? But that's a halacha in Shulchan Aruch. Or the Shulchan Aruch says, when you make a Suda, you should bring out, you bring out all your nice kelim. Don't bring out every last kli. Leave something in the sideboard. You don't want to take out all your nice kelim. Why? Zecher l'chorban. What about if it's a Sudas mitzvah? Do you still make a Zecher l'chorban? Says the Taz, even at a Sudas mitzvah, you make a Zecher l'chorban. Are there any exceptions to this rule? Is there ever a time you don't make a Zecher l'chorban? Says Rav Yaakov Emden in the Marok Tzia, there's one Suda a year, you don't make Zecher l'chorban. You don't remember the Beis HaMikdash. What is it? Sudas Purim. Don't make Zecher l'chorban by Sudas Purim. The Shari Tshuva quotes Rabbi Yaakov Emden, and he codifies that in fact, Sudas Purim, forget about the Beis HaMikdash. Don't make a Zecher l'chorban. Hafla v'fela. You finish Shas, Bavli, Yushalmi, make a Zecher l'chorban. You're like Reb Chaim Kanievsky, Sifra, Sifri, Mechilta, Medrash, make a Zecher l'chorban. But Sudas Purim? No, Sudas Purim you don't make a Zecher l'chorban. You have a Nesuin and a Pidyon Aben with the Siyam HaShas? No, you're going to make a Zecher l'chorban. But not Sudas Purim. Why not Sudas Purim? Says Rabbi Yaakov, you know why not Sudas Purim? Because since on Purim, Chayiv Inish Levesume Bepuraya Adalo Yada Bein Ar Haman Levarach Mordechai. Since you need to become so intoxicated on Purim that you don't know the difference between Ar Haman and Baruch Mordechai, you don't make a Zecher l'chorban. What does that mean even? Because you have to drink a lot, you don't have to remember the Beis HaMikdash? Why wouldn't you have to remember the Beis HaMikdash? And B'chlal, this is a very difficult mitzvah. This is one of the most unusual mitzvahs in the Torah, where the Torah says, we want you to do that which we usually warn you is like the worst possible thing. I mean, think about all the bad things that have happened in the history of the world, and what was the main cause? So let's start with Adam Rishon and Gan Eden, right? So he's there for an hour, and God says, look, Adam, you want to eat oranges, you want to eat apricots, you want to eat bananas, you could eat buxer. Why anybody would ever eat buxer beats me, who knows? You can eat whatever you want. Just don't eat a grape. And Adam Rishon says, why not? I can never eat a grape. So it says, Avada, you could eat it. You could eat a grape in an hour. When Shabbos starts, you'll make Kiddush. But don't make early Kiddush. Don't have a Kiddush club, Adam Rishon. So Adam Rishon's looking at the clock. It's early, but he can't contain himself. So he drinks the wine. And because he drank the wine, he brought Misa La'olam. And now people have to go to work for a living. And there's all the ills of society, all pain, all tzara. Why? Wine. And then you have a man by the name of Noach. And Noach, the whole world is destroyed. He opens up the teva, and what does he do? He takes a misstep. With what? With yayin. And then, like half of mankind, they're cursed, or Canaan. Wine is not a good thing. Like half of Sefer Mishlei is don't drink too much. Don't drink too much. Don't get angry, and also don't drink too much. And by the way, you shouldn't drink a lot. So the Tanakh keeps on warning us about the dangers of yayin. And here the Rebbeinu Shalom tells us, Al Yidei the Amoraim, that on comes Purim, you're supposed to become so inebriated that you don't know the difference between Ar, Hama, and Baruch Mordechai. I mean, you're putting people's lives in peril. You're jeopardizing people's health. How could there be such a mitzvah of Chayiv Inishal Besume Beparaya Ad, and then not to know the difference between Haman and Mordechai? That's the whole purpose of Purim. The whole purpose of Purim is to wipe out Haman and to elevate Mordechai. Bruchim. You know, Chazal say you have to say Baruch Mordechai and Or Haman. Oh, and also drink so much so you don't know who's who. I mean, how do you reconcile that? So there's a classic Perush on Megillas Esther. This is perhaps the most fundamental Perush on Megillas Esther from one of the Kadmonim, Rabbi Lezer Ashkenazi, the author of Maseh Hashem. He wrote a famous Haggadah, Maseh Hashem. And the name of this parish is Yosef Lekach. In the new editions of the Bir Hagra on Megillas Esther, Reb Shlomo, what? Shlomo Brevda, thank you. On the bottom is published the Yosef Lekach. Says the Yosef Lekach, he says, well, why would Chazal institute a mitzvah to get so drunk on Purim? We know all the dangers of drinking. Says the Yosef Lekach, you have to understand the historical context of the story of Purim. Think about when it happened. 70 years earlier, Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. And the Yidden were watching the Beis HaMikdash go down in flames, and they were weeping, they were crying, and they were being led by the waters of Babylon. And the captors said, "No, sing to us, serenade us, sing to us some of the songs of Yushalayim." And they said, "What? Ich nashir ashir Hashem al ad mas nechar." We can't sing about Yerushalayim when we're in Churban. And they took a shvuah, they took an oath. They said, "Im eshkachech Yerushalayim tishkach yamini." They said, our tongues should be parched. If I don't remember Yerushalayim, if Yerushalayim is not at the forefront of my mind, we swore that God should parch our throats and our tongues. And then Nebuchadnezzar said, "No, play some music." And the Leviim said, "We're not going to play music for you." And they went ahead and they bit off their thumbs. So they walked around for 70 years without thumbs. It's not easy not to have a thumb. Do you know how many Leviim came back in the times of the second Beis HaMikdash? Yevamis, Daf Pei Vav, the Gemara says, "Umimnei Levi loy matzasi sham." There were no Leviim. So Tosfos asks, there were no Leviim in the times of the second Beis HaMikdash, but Asara Yuchsin Alu Bavel. Says Tosfos, yeah, none of the young Leviim came back, and the only Leviim that came back were the old Leviim that had already bitten off their thumbs, so there was nobody to play music in the second Beis HaMikdash. So Ezra got fed up, and he says, you know what? We take away Maser Rishon from the Leviim. So the Jews could not live without a Beis HaMikdash. The Beis HaMikdash is the life force of the Jew. So Mordechai comes along and says, Yidden, we know your lives were in peril, you were in danger, and the Rebbeinu Shalom saved you, so you know what we're going to do now? Mishteh v'simcha v'yom tov. And Klal Yisrael say, Yom Tov? Why, we're going to build the Beis HaMikdash? Mordechai said, no, the Beis HaMikdash is b'chorbana. So the Yidden said, okay, Yom Tov without a Beis HaMikdash? We're going to sit down and rejoice without a Beis HaMikdash? How could you rejoice without a Beis HaMikdash? We swore, Im loy alas Yushalayim aroy simchasi. We can't have Purim. Klal Yisrael said, no, Mordechai, no Purim. The Gemara even says Mordechai tried to institute a Yom Tov, and Klal Yisrael said, nice try. Nah, no thanks, Mordechai. So Mordechai uBezdinai, they stroked their beards and they thought, how can we get Klal Yisrael to celebrate the greatest Yeshua in history? After all, that Rizal writes, the Or of Purim, there was never a light like this in the history of the world. So Mordechai had an Einfal. He's going to be Mesakin that one day a year Klal Yisrael has to forget about the Beis HaMikdash. And therefore Mordechai was Mesakin that on Purim you have to drink Chayiv inish lebesume ad lo yada mi Beis HaMikdash. But you can't say that. You can't say that. Can you imagine if it said in Shulchan Aruch, Chayiv inish lebesume beporaya ad lo yada Beis HaMikdash? That would be sacrilegious. So Mordechai told everyone, listen, Chayiv inish besume until you forget about me. You get it? Yichap? You understand what I mean? And they said, oh yeah, we got it, Mordechai. They would never write, you need to drink until you forget about the Beis HaMikdash. But that's why there's a mitzvah to drink, which I think would exempt many people from drinking Bisman Hazeh. The whole reason to drink is to forget about the Beis. Some people are on such a high madriga, they don't even need the yayin to forget about the Beis HaMikdash. So the whole tachlis of drinking on Purim is to be able to enjoy, one, to have temporary amnesia, to temporarily forget about the Beis HaMikdash, to enjoy the salvation of Purim. So now the psak of Rabbi Yaakov Emden is crystal clear. Says Rabbi Yaakov Emden, there's one day a year you don't make a zeicher l'chorban. When? Purim. Why? Says Rabbi Yaakov Emden, because chayiv inish lebesume b'parei. What does one thing have to do with the other? It's obvious, it's Parshat. The whole purpose of Purim is to forget for one day a year about the great destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, to put it aside, to block it out of your mind. Yes, we swore, but we're not going to think about that today. Today we need to just celebrate the fact that in the Golus, HaKadosh Baruch Hu saved us and protected us. So if there's one day a year we don't remember Beis HaMikdash, it's Purim. Maybe it just hit me, B'schus harabim, b'schus being in Yerushalayim Yer HaKodesh. We don't add kroivitz on Purim to the bracha of Esemach David Avdecha Meheras Atzmiach. And this is a big kasha. And this is addressed by Reb Pinchas Karatzer, but maybe the answer is because we're not going to be moisef to the bracha of Esemach. We want to draw as little attention to the Beis HaMikdash on Purim as possible. The whole purpose of the Yom Tif of Purim is to forget about it. You're going to add to the bracha of Esemach David? No, that bracha, let's get through it quickly. According to this amazing approach of the Yosef Lekach, the Gemara reads Kaftar V'Ferach. Just like in the month of Av, we're Mamayit B'Simcha because we have to think about the Beis HaMikdash. It has to be in the forefront of our mind. It has to be the center of our attention. We have to mourn it. We have to think about it. Chayiv Adam Lios, Chayiv Yirei Shamayim Lios, Yorei Umeitzar V'Doyeg Achorim Beis HaMikdash. So in the exact polar opposite of the month of Av, Kishem that in the month of Av, it's designated to mourn the Beis HaMikdash, Mishanichnas Adar Marben Besimcha, because this month we have to forget about the Churban Beis HaMikdash. It's Zelu Umazeh. Adar is Keneged Av. Av, we focus on it. We don't let it out of our minds. We're not Mesiach Das from the Avelos. Adar, yes, we are Mesiach Das from the Avelos. That's the whole tachlis of the Yom Tov of Purim. Hashem allows us just 1 month a year to say, yes, it's very dear to us, but in order to fully appreciate the salvation, we have to be Mesiach Das just a little bit from the Beis HaMikdash. That is approach number 1. Approach number 2. The Medrash says in Esther Rabbah that after the salvation of Purim, Mordechai did something very unusual. Mordechai, Yatzoloi Moinitin Ba'olam. He minted coins. One side of the coin was a picture of Mordechai. Then the other side of the coin was a picture of Esther. Does that make any sense that Mordechai was minting coins? I mean, if you heard How's Reb Chaim Kanievsky doing? Oh, Reb Chaim soll gesund sein. Now look covered the new, what's the tzedakah over there? Kupat Ha'ir. They're minting coins with Reb Chaim Kanievsky, and the government has allowed a new coin, Reb Chaim on one side, and Rebbetzin Kanievsky on the other side, and Reb Chaim endorses this coin. So why would Reb Chaim Kanievsky mint coins? He's not interested in that. That's the furthest thing from his mind. It would be of complete inconsequential to Reb Chaim to have a coin with his image on it. So what's Mordechai doing minting coins? This is the kasha of Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz, and also the Nachlas David. Nachlas David, Reb David Tevel, Talmud of Reb Chaim Volozhiner. He addresses this question in his Drashas Beis David. He says as follows, the Rambam says, there are 3 mitzvahs that Klal Yisrael are chayevin upon entry into Eretz Yisrael. Mitzvah number 1, you have to appoint a king. You have to make a melech. Mitzvah number 2, you need to destroy Amalek. Mitzvah number 3, you need to build the Beis HaMikdash. You got it? King, destroy Amalek, build the Beis HaMikdash. In order to destroy Amalek, you need to be a melech. In order to build the Beis HaMikdash, you need to destroy Amalek. If you can't destroy Amalek unless you're a melech. So in times of the first Beis HaMikdash, David came, he wiped out Amalek pretty significantly. He's a melech. Once he wiped out Amalek, they built the temple. Once and everything's great. They made a king, they killed Amalek, and they made the Beis HaMikdash. And once they made the Beis HaMikdash, the Shechina came down on the Beis HaMikdash because they followed the 3-step program. Melech, kill Amalek, build the temple. You build the temple the right way, the Shechina comes down. But we know from the pasuk in Chagai, ve'ertza ba va'achabda, the Gemara says in Yuma that the word va'achabda is missing a hey. That the second Beis HaMikdash was missing 5 things that the first Beis HaMikdash had, and one of the 5 things was the Shechina was not present in the time of the second Beis HaMikdash. Why not? Where was the Shechina? Says Rav David Tevel, amazing thing. In order to have Shechina, you need to have a real Beis HaMikdash. In order to have a real Beis HaMikdash, you got to destroy Amalek. In order to destroy Amalek, you need a melech. So now the Jews are going up to Eretz Yisrael after the 70 years, and they want to build a Beis HaMikdash, but they have to first destroy Amalek, so they need a melech, but there's no melech. So Mordechai says, I'm a melech. O Mordechai ha-Yehudi, Mishneh la melech Achashverosh. I'm a shtickle melech, Mordechai says. And Esther's a malka. So the Jews say, you're a melech, so where's your coins? So Mordechai said, got to get to work. So Mordechai opens up a mint, and he mints coins with his tsura on it to give himself a din of Amalek, to give himself a din of Melech, to destroy Amalek, to build the Beis HaMikdash. Now, it wasn't a full-fledged Malchus, and therefore the Shechina never really came back to the second Beis HaMikdash, but they wouldn't even have been able to build it had Mordechai not had the halachic status to some extent of a Melech. Which means that the story of Purim paved the way for Mordechai to be elevated for Malchus in order to rebuild the second Beis HaMikdash. If not for the miracle of Purim, the second Beis HaMikdash would never have been built. I'm going to share with you now this detail I once said a couple years ago, but I want to mention it in this context. The story of Purim literally built the second Beis HaMikdash. You know, the Megillah ends, Vayasem hamelech Achashverosh mas al haaretz v'yeh hayam Achashverosh taxed the people. That's the end of the story. Here, you're writing this book. It's like the most dramatic book in all of Tanakh. And here's the grand ending. The grand ending is, you know what happened? Not only were our lives saved, but there's a new government that has more taxes. Okay, now let's celebrate Purim. That's the grand finale of Megillah Esther. Taxes! Could somebody have that pasuk get into Megillah Esther? Say, no, it's just there to know the history of the times. The next pasuk is, you want to know the history? Go to the Chronicles of Persia, It's not a history book. No detail was written to give you a better understanding of the history. So why does the Megillah end that Achashverosh taxed the people? That's Kasha the Brisker Rav. You ready for an incredible approach? The answer is very simple. If you look in Sefer Ezra, the Jews go up to rebuild the second Beis HaMikdash. The problem is they had no good fundraisers. You know, if you have a chashva kaila, everybody knows that making a real good a pitch for fundraising, it's a hele gezach. It's like dvarim ha'imdim berumay shalaylam. You know the story? There was a plane, and it was experiencing a lot of turbulence, and people were getting really nervous. People are holding down. You know, the oxygen's coming down, and the pilot announces, "Look, I think we could handle this, but it's a little bit of a very dangerous situation. If there are any religious leaders on the flight, now's the time to do something religious." So the Rav got up and he gave a very sincere appeal. So it's a very who raised the money for the second Beis HaMikdash? So it says in Ezra, the Jews couldn't afford it. So they turned to Daryavesh, and Daryavesh says, "Okay, you can't afford it." It says he opens up the royal treasury, and he took all the tax money, and he gave it to the Yidden to rebuild the second temple. Where did he get all the tax money from? Where did Daryavesh get all this tax money from? Vayasem HaMelech Achashverosh mas al ha'aretz v'yeh hayam. He got it from Papa. He got it from his father. So the Megillah ends off, by the way, not only did God save the Jews, but Achashverosh is now raising money to rebuild the second Beis HaMikdash. So think about how the Purim story has come full circle. The story begins that Achashverosh is celebrating that the Beis HaMikdash has been destroyed for 70 years and will never ever be rebuilt. And by the end of the story, Achashverosh has become the chief fundraiser for the second Beis HaMikdash. So what did Purim lead to directly? Binyan Bayis Sheni. It made Mordechai the king. It gave him the halachic status to destroy Amalek, to be able to build the second Beis HaMikdash. It raised the money for the second Beis HaMikdash. Kishem shemishenichnas av mimatin besimcha. Just like when the month of Av comes in, we diminish joy because we commemorate mourning for the Beis HaMikdash. When the month of Adar comes in, we celebrate the ingredients needed to rebuild the second Beis HaMikdash. If Av is the month of destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, Adar is the month of building the second Beis HaMikdash. So you say, but we don't have the second Beis HaMikdash. Says the Navi Yecheskel, that they completed the second Beis HaMikdash on the third day of Adar. And they made a Chanukas Habayis. And in Ezra it says the Chanukas Habayis lasted 21 days until the 23rd day of Adar. Says the Malbim, why did they make such a long Chanukas Habayis? Says the Malbim, because we have a tradition from the Navi Yecheskel that the third Beis HaMikdash will be built on the 23rd day of Adar. That's what the Navi Yecheskel says. So the Yidden felt, if we rebuild the second Beis HaMikdash finish it on the third day of Adar, and we're mamshich the Chanukas Habayis until the 23rd, the Rebbeinu Shalom will say, okay, you built the second Beis HaMikdash, I'll just give you the third one now. Now you're ready for it. You already celebrated 21 days Bayis Sheni. It's a good time to rebuild the Bayis Shlishi. Let's call it a day. So that means that the month of Adar is not only misugal, is not only predisposed to the Binyan Bayis Sheni, it's also the month of the rebuilding of the third Beis HaMikdash. Now, there are other views about this. The Maser Rekeach is quoted by Chassam Sofer. The Kaf HaChaim brings down that we have a tradition, third Beis HaMikdash will be built on Pesach, and then the final 7 days of Nisan are reserved for the Chanukah of the third Beis HaMikdash. But this is what the Malbim writes, that the Navi Yechezkel says, the third Beis HaMikdash will come down min hashamayim on the 23rd day of Adar. So now the Gemara reads beautifully again. Kishem shemishanichnas Av mematin b'simcha. Just like when the month of Av comes in, we diminish our joy because we mourn the destruction of Bayis Rishon and Bayis Sheni. So too, when the month of Adar comes in, we're marbe b'simcha because in this month we anticipate the rebuilding of the third Beis Hamikdash, sheyiboneh b'mheira v'yamin. And now we're ready for the grand finale. So this Achashverosh guy, what kind of name is that? I'm saying when he was born, his parents said, they said, V'yikarei shemoi b'paras Achashverosh. What kind of crazy parents did he have? You give a kid a name like that? Achashverosh? I mean, in school, they just made fun of him all day. You see that guy in there, Achashverosh? The Gemara asks, what does the name Achashverosh mean? That anyone who would think of his name, he would say, Ach l'roishai, Ach woe to my head. Why woe to my head? Why not woe to my ear, to my nose, to my foot? What does Achashverosh got to do with a head? Ach l'libi, Ach l'moichi, why l'roishi? Ach l'roishi. You know, the story of the Megillah, they're like hung up on hanging people. Like you can't get enough of hanging people. Like we have to hang everybody. Haman says, what do I do with this Mordechai guy? Zeresh says, make eitz gavoya chamishim amma. Chamishim amma, you're out of your mind? Who makes an eitz gavoya chamishim amma? I mean, according to the Chazon Ish, that's 100 feet tall. What's 100? You can't even see. Lo sholta ba'eno. What's the? No, we have to hang Mordechai. What do you got to hang him for? The Gemara in Bracha says there are lamaves toitzais. There are over 900 ways to kill somebody. Where do they come up with hanging? Why don't you poison him? Shoot an arrow at him? I don't need to mention all 900 ways to kill somebody. But where did they come up with hanging? They didn't. Big Son and Seresh wanted to poison Achashverosh. So why didn't Haman just slip some cyanide in his drink and call it a day? Yasuit. And then Charvoinus says, you know what? Why don't you hang Haman? Why do you have to hang him? Just kill him, knock him off. He's saying, take out a pistol and shoot him. And then, listen to this. Esther, they killed the 10 sons of Haman. They're dead. Esther says, yeah, they're dead, I know, but we didn't hang them yet. What, are they laundry? Well, why do they have to hang everybody? It's one thing they didn't die yet, so you're going to hang them, but they're dead. No, but they're not hung to dry. So we have a very emotional encounter between two brothers. Tonight we're commemorating the neshama of Esther Shoshana Bas Ruvain. It's a very close relationship between Achim, Achayois, one of the most emotional encounters in history, the encounter of Yosef HaTzadik and Binyamin. And what does the pasuk say? Yosef sees Binyamin, Vayipol al tzavare Binyamin achiv vayev. Yosef falls on his brother's neck and he cries, Ubinyamin bacha al tzavarav. And Binyamin cried on his necks. I mean, how many necks did Yosef have already? What do you mean he cried on his necks? I don't know anyone. What do you mean he cried on his necks? So Rashi seems to be bothered by this question. So Rashi says, what does it mean that that Yosef cried on the neck of Binyamin? Yosef cried over the two Batei Mikdashim that were built in the Chelek of Binyamin, and Binyamin cried over Mishkan Shilai that was built in the Chelek of Yosef. Apparently, Rashi's identifying that what part of the body represents the Beis HaMikdash? The neck. The neck is a reference, is a mashal to the Beis HaMikdash. And in fact, we find that throughout Tanakh, the Beis HaMikdash is referred to as a neck. Kimigdal David, Tzavarech, like the Tower of David is his neck, is your neck. Tzavarech, Kimigdal Hashem. The Beis HaMikdash is called a Tzavar. I mean, would you have thought, We have this beautiful Beis HaMikdash. This is a place that Hashem is Shoresh Shechina, and you could give it a name, a part of the body. What do we call it? A neck. Why is it called a neck? Yosef cries over the necks of Binyamin, the two Batei Mikdashim of Binyamin. Binyamin cries on his neck, Mishkan Shiloi. Why is the Beis HaMikdash called a neck? Says the Chasam Sofer in many, many Mekoimos. Says the Avnei Nezer, the Shem Yishmael quotes it a couple of times. What is the function of a neck? What is the objective of a neck? The neck connects the head to the body. A person has an idea, a person has a thought, he sends the impulses, he sends the idea down to the guf through the medium of the neck. You eat something, the heart pumps blood to the head through the neck. The oxygen goes up to the head through the neck. All thought descends to the body through the tzavar. All nutrients, all oxygen, all blood comes up to the head through the neck. The neck is the medium, the connector. Why is the Beis HaMikdash called a neck? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is our Rosh. Shenemar vayavar malkam lefneihem vashem beroisham. God is the Rosh. Klal Yisrael is the guf. How do we connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Through what is HaKadosh Baruch Hu mashpia, shefa, bracha, brios, all good things comes down to the world through the medium of the Beis HaMikdash. Chazal say if the nations of the world would have known how much bracha comes through the Beis HaMikdash, they never would have destroyed it. And all of our tefillos, whether you're in the 5 towns, whether you're in Borough Park, even Williamsburg, even there, the tefillos come up through the Makoim HaMikdash, the Shar HaShamayim. All Avodah goes up through the Beis HaMikdash. All Shefa comes down through the Beis HaMikdash. Ad Hayoim. The Beis HaMikdash is the neck, that savar, that connects the Rosh to the Guf. And the nations of the world also have a neck. Every nation in the world has a sar. Daniel saw in a dream, he saw the nations of the world are represented by different animals. Greece is represented by a leopard, and Paras is represented by a bear. And these are the Sorim, Shamala, Rahav is the Sar of Mitzrayim. So every nation has a ministering angel, and there's an Am, and they're connected through their Mekoimos. They have Mekoimos. The Nesivos HaMishpat writes, the purpose of Migdal Bavel was it served as a vehicle, as a medium between the Sorim Shamala and the Am Shalmata. With that introduction, let's deal with the following question. You know, tomorrow night is a very special night. Tomorrow night is the yahrzeit of Moshe Rabbeinu, which means tonight is the hachana for the yahrzeit of Moshe Rabbeinu. That's another reason why we gather together tonight. Because hachana is even more important than the mitzvah itself. So tonight we have to prepare for the yahrzeit. So you say, no, the yahrzeit of Moshe Rabbeinu is an Adar Beis. Avada not. Yom HaDehilula is an Adar Aleph. Why? Because when it comes to bar mitzvah, when you're a bar oinshin, we want to push it off. We push it off to Adar Beis. When it comes to bring an Eloi to the neshama, ein ma'avir ala mitzvahs, we have to do an Adar Aleph. So tomorrow night is Moshe Rabbeinu's yahrzeit. Why did Haman rejoice over Adar? So Chazal say he saw it was the yahrzeit of Moshe Rabbeinu. But Chazal also say Haman opened up the newspapers and he checked out the astrological signs of the various months. And he saw the month of Adar is the big, scary fish. Ooh, the fish. Fish are very scary. So Haman said, you know, fish, the big fish, eats the little fish. I'm going to eat up the Jews. I mean, come on, give me a break. Did you ever have a nightmare about a fish? I know people, they have nightmares. They come to the Rav, there was like a 7-headed dragon chasing them, and nobody ever came to me, Marda Asra Shlita.
Jaws.
It's a good ha'ara. Yeah? Nobody ever came to me. They were being chased by a goldfish, you know? What? I mean, Haman really got, this month, This month is the month of the fish. Ooh, the fish. I mean, the lion, why didn't he say, the month of the lion, he's gonna eat up the Klal Yisrael like a chayara. No, a dog. A dog is it's the nicest animal. Well, how did the fish empower Haman HaRasha? Says Chassam Sofer, even though every nation in the world needs to connect to its Rosh through a medium, there's one nation in this world that has such koyach and such power that it doesn't need a medium. It's a Rosh and a guf without any tzavar at all. That it and its sar are mechubar kechaticha achas without any memutza, and that is Amalek, Haman, Esav. Esav is the samach mem, and Esav, it's like a roish and a guf with no neck. That's why Esav is compared to the one behemoth that has no neck. Yichar semena chazir miyar. Esav is compared to a pig. You know what a pig is? They have these games. You have 3 parts: head, neck, body. Take out the neck, put a head on a body. That's a pig. A pig has no tzavar. There's no tzavar on a pig. Says the Chassam Sofer, the reason why Esav is compared to a pig is because Esav is so full of tumah. Esav is the embodiment of tumah. Esav is the nachash. Nachash is a roish and a guf with no tzavar. So Esav is a chazir. And when Esav is a chazir, it turns to Klal Yisrael and it says, you guys have a neck. I'm going to take your neck and I'm going to cut it off. I'm going to sever it because I don't even need a neck. And therefore Haman is fixated on hanging Mordechai, representing the Beis HaMikdash will never be built. There'll never be a tzavar. We're going to sever your neck. I'm a Molek, I'm a Rosh and a Guf, and you're not going to have a tzavar ever, ever, ever. That was the plan of Haman HaRasha. And then he sees in the papers, you know what the month of Adar is? Oh, it's my month. It's the month of the fish, the dog. Rosh, Guf, no tzavar. We're all set. Haman says, we're not going to pencil in the date. We're going to take a permanent marker. We're going to mark the month of Adar. This is the month of the Nachash, the month of the Chazir, and the month of the dog. No tzavar in Adar. Adar is the month that we call eternal doom to the Beis HaMikdash. Says the Heilige Chassam Sofer in Parshas Vayigash, in Parshas Toldos, Ayin Sham. But Haman made a very big mistake. Because the same way Esav doesn't need a neck, Klal Yisrael doesn't need a neck. Ideally, we don't really need a Beis HaMikdash. What? That's what we brought in a guy from 5 towns to Yerushalayim, and we don't really need a Beis HaMikdash? Says the Sfarnai, before the Chet HaEgel, the pasuk says, B'chol makom asher avoi elecha, B'chol makom asher azkir es shemi, avoi elecha ubeirachticha. The original plan was not to have a Beis HaMikdash. What do you need a Beis HaMikdash for? V'shachanti b'seicham. Ha'avois hein heim hamerkava. Avram was a merkava. The Shekhinah rested on Abraham, rested on Yitzchak, rested on Yaakov, and should have rested on me and you. And you know what else the Sfarno says? Originally, Hashem was not going to tell us to eat only kosher food. Parsha Shmini comes after the Chet HaEgel, Sfarno writes. Why? Because if not for the Chet HaEgel, we would have been on such a high madrega, we would not have needed the assistance of kosher food to bring down onto our guf hashras hashchina. But then Klal Yisrael sinned by it with the Egel. And Moshe Rabbeinu and Hashem said, okay, it's been nice knowing you. Adios amigos, tzeschem l'shalom, have a great day. I go my way, you go your. Klal Yisrael, we're going to be lost. No problem, says God. Hine anochi shalech malach. You don't need me. I'm going to send a malach. I'll go up to the Shamayim, the 7th Rakia, and you guys, you wander in the desert with my malach. If you're not with us, we're not going anywhere. So Moshe davened, and he davened, and Hashem said, okay, salachti kidvarecha. So Klal Yisrael said, no, are you coming back to us? You going to rest on us? Hashem said, no, no, thanks. I'm going to stay in a hotel. I can't stay in your house. What's the hotel? Make a mishkan. Through the mishkan, I'll rest on you. And you know what else? You're not holy enough anymore that I could just rest in your presence. You have to eat only badats or kosher food. Whatever hechsher you give, I'm not getting it. That's the last thing I'm getting into over here. Says the Sforno, the inyan of the mikdash and the inyan of machalos tahiros is only because of the chet ha'egel. It's a chiddush nifla. Chassam Sofer quotes this in many, many places. He doesn't quote the Sforno by name. He says this idea, that the ideal madrega of Klal Yisrael is that Klal Yisrael themselves will be the Beis HaMikdash. That's the madrega of La'asid Lavai. You know what madrega that's called? That's madrega of the dog. The dog is the symbol of the madrega of Klal Yisrael, not needing a Beis HaMikdash. Rosham v'gufam b'chativa achas. The fish is the symbol of Klal Yisrael b'yemais HaMashiach. Says the Sefer Shvila Pinchas, maybe that's why the Magen Avram says, by every Suda of Shabbos, you eat dogim. Shabbos is Me'in Olam Haba. Shabbos is the Beis HaMikdash. We don't need a mak. So Chassam Sofer says, yeah, but what's going to happen to the mitzvah of building the Beis HaMikdash? We only need it as a makom hakravas karbonos, but we won't need it as a place of hashras hashchina. And Lekavod the Rosh Kollel, he said, I have to hear Sa'olam the Shazach. It could be, the Ramban says the reason, what's the purpose of the Beis HaMikdash? It's a makom hashras hashchina. The Rambam doesn't say that. The Rambam says the purpose of the Beis HaMikdash is makom avoida. He says that in the Sefer HaMitzvos, he says in the Yad HaChazaka, the purpose, the tachlis of the Mikdash, it's a makom avoida. Why doesn't the Rambam say like the Ramban? The purpose of the Mikdash, it's a makom hashras hashchina. Because the Rambam holds you can only count mitzvahs that will be for all time. By the same token, perhaps, the Rambam will only be magdir a mitzvah by its definition for all time. And since la'asad lavai, the mikdash will not be needed as a makom hashras hashchina, only as a makom of hakravas karbonis, the Rambam has to be magdir it as its eternal state. So Haman made a big mistake. He looks at the fish, he thinks it's his month. He didn't realize that Adar is like a month out of a different tekufa. You know why kol hamoyadim yu b'telem v'purim lo yeh batel? You know why Purim will never become batel? Because Purim is a month out of the la'asid lavai transplanted into bizman hazeh. How could Purim ever become batel? It already is post olam hazeh, so it can't become batel. The Bnei Yissaschar writes that every month of the year corresponds to another Aver of the Rosh, and the month of Adar corresponds to the nose, the sense of smell. And all the heroes of Purim are connected to smell. Mordechai, Marderar, Esther, Hadassah, the fragrant Hadassah. Because of all the senses that were used by the Cheda, the Eitz Hadas, Adam HaRishon took the fruit, he felt the fruit, he listened to his wife, he saw the fruit, he tasted the fruit, but he didn't smell the fruit. The sense of smell was never impugned. It was never nifgam. It retains its original status of pre-chet. And therefore the month of Adar, which is a month out of the la'asid lavoi, corresponds to the sense of smell. And therefore Mordechai and Esther are connected to the sense of smell. That's why the Gemara Brachas asks, do you have to make a bracha on smell? Asks the Bnei says, what do you mean do you have to make a bracha on smell? Of course you do. Asur la'adam lehanas b'an lazeh b'loi bracha. No, the answer is that the reason we make a bracha is to be mevarer, to select the toy from the ra. But in smell, there's no ra. Smell is kuloi pri-chet. That's what the Bnei Yissaschar says. How do you know if someone's Moshiach? A guy comes into shul. Mazel Tov to so-and-so. He makes announcements, and he says, I'm Mashiach also, I forgot to tell you. So how do we know if a guy's Mashiach? He has a bumper sticker, he has a card. Here's my card. So the Gemara says in Sanhedrin, V'harichoi b'yiras Hashem. If he could whiff out a case, if he could smell a court case, he doesn't have a raya brew, he could smell it out, he's Mashiach. Why? Because the sense of smell is the sense that was never impugned by the Chet of the Eitz Hadas. The sense of smell is the sense of Chodesh Adar. Adar is representative of the Choitem. It's a month of La'asad Lavai. If it's a month of La'asad Lavai, it's Mazal Adar Dogim. But every time we say Achashverosh, we get very nervous. We say, Ach L'roishi, we're afraid he's going to sever the tzavar. Because Achashverosh said, Ad Chatzi Amalchus, V'seyas. Achashverosh said, you ain't building the Beis HaMikdash. So every time you think about Achashverosh, you get a headache, You think you get a little uncomfortable. It's got to be uncomfortable being a chazer. Without a neck, not so much headspace, it just gets a little claustrophobic. You know what I mean? So then, after the tables are turned, Mordechai says to Esther, now we're going to take the chazer and we're going to hang him. Could it be, the Or Chaim HaKadosh famously says, L'asad Lavei, the chazer will become tahar again. That's the lashon of chazir, it's asid lahachzir leheteroi. Yeah, but it doesn't chew its cud. Yeah, it doesn't chew its cud because it doesn't have a neck. But L'asad Lavei, Esav, the Samach Mem, and the Am will become separate from each other. And it will have a neck. Mamela will chew its cud. And perhaps that's the mechanism that the Rebbeinu Shalom will use. The month of Adar is the month of the dog. It represents the ideal state of Klal Yisrael. That we only need a Beis HaMikdash as a Makam Avoida. But we don't need a Beis HaMikdash as a Makam of Hashras Hashchina. The month of Adar, we have a shemetz, a little taste, a little feel of what it could be like to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu without the tzavar, where the Rebbeinu Shalom is v'nosati mishkani b'soichechem, that the Rebbeinu Shalom rests on v'shachanti b'soicham. And therefore the Gemara reads like gold. Kishem shemi shenechnas av mematin b'simcha. Just like the month of Av, we diminish joy because we mourn over the Churban Beis HaMikdash. We mourn over the loss of our neck. We mourn over the loss of our memutza beineinu levein avinu shebashamayim. Mishanichnas Adar marbim b'simcha, because we could almost feel the closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu of what life will be like without even the need to have a Beis HaMikdash. It's the month of the dog. It's the month of connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu even v'ithout the memutza. Mazel Adar Dogim. Kol hayomim tovim asidim libatel. Chas v'shalom. Not even one ois of the Torah will become batal. But it means its significance will become batal. But the month of Adar, the Yom Tov of Purim, Einon Asidin Libatel La'ilam. So we have three ways of reading the Gemara. Just like in the month of Av, we're Mamayit B'Simcha, the month of Adar, the Rebbeinu Shalom says, okay, 1 month a year, you could forget about the Churban Beis HaMikdash in order to properly celebrate this great salvation. Another pshat, just like in the month of Av, we commemorate destruction. In the month of Adar, we celebrate the month that paved the way for the building of the second Beis HaMikdash. It was the day the second Beis HaMikdash was complete. It's the month predisposed for the Chanukah of the third Beis HaMikdash Sheyibana. And finally, just like in the month of Av, we celebrate the destruction of Tzavarenu. The month of Adar, the month of the dog, we're able to be besimcha, thinking, feeling, yearning, being in touch with that great future opportunity of v'nosati mishkani b'soichechem. May we be zoiche to all the different perushim of this Gemara. May we be zoiche to see the binyan Beis HaMikdash sheyibane b'mher v'yameinu. We should have back a Makam Avoida, a Makam Hashras Hashchina, and the Rebbeinu Shem should elevate all of us to the Madrega, Mamleches, Kohanim, V'Goy Kadosh, that we should be Zoicha to the great Tevekus HaKadosh Baruch Hu of Nasati, Mishkani, B'Soichechem. Thank you so much for coming. Bracha v'Hatzlacha. Afreilichen Adar and Afreilichen Purim. Habalinu l'Tayva.
Shir Shir Chadash